40 years ago this week, Boston's school desegregation plan was put into motion. The images of the shouting, protesting, and rock throwing helped tell the story, but a collection of recently uncovered essays written during the height of the unrest by a group of sixth graders puts the crisis into new perspective. WGBH News reporter Phillip Martin caught up with the authors of some of these essays, which are now helping teach another generation about the turmoil.
Growing up in Dorchester in the 1970s, Cynthia Martin says she didn't give much thought to white kids. That all changed in 1974, when the first white students were bused to her neighborhood school, the Oliver Wendell Holmes Middle School.
When you walk into a classroom and you see people that don't exactly look like you and you hear what's happening in the media, you're kind of a little afraid how people are going to react to each other.
But in spite of the drama outside many Boston schools, Martin says what happened inside was very different.
We just found out that we were just all kids.
Towards the end of that first semester, teacher Richard Mulhern asked Martin and her 30 classmates to write about their experiences in those first weeks of forced integration.
He pulled out of us, inspiration. And it was almost as if anything that we wrote, he could help us develop it and make it into something worthwhile reading.
Today, Cynthia Martin still lives near the home school. As she sits in the school's courtyard, her fingers trace the words she wrote 40 years ago.
I never thought about being bused because I had heard that I was going to the Oliver Wendell Holmes or to the Trotter School.
Martin considered herself fortunate. Unlike thousands of other students, she was never bused. But her school, which had been predominantly black, was now integrating.
Integration is a good and a bad thing. It is good because blacks and whites can get to know each other and their ways. It's bad because they think they can't get along.
Cynthia had largely forgotten about the essays that she and her classmates wrote, but they were recently found by a Brandeis University professor combing through the papers of former Boston Mayor Kevin White. Now yellow from age, Cynthia is surprised at their significance.
I know I didn't value it when it was happening, or even after, until now, till you all make me open up the archives and find these rare findings.
Now these essays are being taught in the classrooms of the Oliver Wendell Holmes, now an elementary school. The students read from the essays, written by kids not much older than themselves.
The white kids threw rocks at the buses that the black kids were riding in.
That's from the essay of Joseph Kiernan. Today, Kiernan still walks past the home school every day, but his essay captures very different feelings of an anxious 11-year-old starting sixth grade in 1974.
At first, I thought I was going to be bused because busing was just getting started. I also felt secure since I had some friends who would be coming with me. I also felt relieved, but I was worried about what might happen.
Like Cynthia Martin, Joseph Kiernan was not bused, but he still feared how integration would play out.
I felt worried about integration because last year, the white kids threw rocks at the buses that the black kids were riding. I said to myself, if they could do it once, they could do it again.
Joseph Kiernan and Cynthia Martin say the events of that year had a major impact on their lives. The experience led both of them to send their children to integrated schools.
It just amazes me how at age 12, that it didn't matter to us that we were black or white or Asian or Spanish. It was just kids getting along, being kids.
Kids whose words are now framed in a pivotal part of Boston's history. For WGBH News, I'm Phillip Martin.
My next guest lived through the busing crisis. Leola Hampton was 14 when she was sent to South Boston to attend high school. Welcome to Greater Boston.
Thank you.
So Leola, you were living in Roxbury. You're 14. What did you think was going to happen?
Oh, there was just so much controversy going on. I think at 14 you're just uncertain. You really don't know what to expect. And of course then the unexpected did happen. We were bused and the resistance was just frightening and overwhelming.
Were you on some of those buses? Were they
Yes.
throwing rocks and pulling people off?
Yeah, our bus was, bombed with the rocks as we were leaving school that first day, and just so afraid and wanting to get home. It's something that you never forget because you don't feel secure. You don't feel safe. You're not with your parents.
So when you heard what Cynthia had to say in the piece, that once you were in the school, everybody was just like one kid after another. It didn't matter whether you were black or white. Was that your experience?
No, no.
It's different in South Boston.
Yeah, it was different. Everyone stayed segregated, and eventually, when when we had police at every classroom door, police lined across the cafeteria. The blacks were on one side and the whites were on the other side. Did
that ever change? You were probably in 9th grade?
I was in 9th grade.
Did it change by the time you were a senior?
Things started to change a little bit because we are kids. And eventually we do talk, but it never got to a place where I can say I befriended anyone.
Was it a good experience overall or a bad one?
I think I have mixed feelings. At the age that I am now, I think more about what can I do to help the progress of race relations, because you don't want anyone to go through that. And so at some point, yeah, it was good because I want to do better. I want a better world. And on the other side, it was definitely traumatic to the point where I don't think I even knew that I was traumatized until I was preparing to go to college. And, you know, I'm getting my physical and I'm told by the doctor that I have high blood pressure at 17.
Wow.
That, you know, why do you grind your teeth at night? I didn't know the impact of what I experienced every single day going to school.
All right, let's bring David Cunningham into the discussion. He's a sociology professor at Brandeis University who specializes in the Civil Rights era South. He's also the author of Klansville, USA. So David, I mean, I was living in Connecticut at the time, and of course I followed it, and I was here a few years after that. I remember the tension still every beginning of the school year. You know, we sent cameras down to South Boston to see what was going to go. But it was a very highly charged political thing. I mean, these people like Leola are the ones who were deeply, deeply affected, and all the families who had children. But the much bigger, larger discussion, not only in Boston, but all over the country, was about the political issue, about whether this was the right thing or the wrong thing. And I don't know if anybody has really sorted that out specifically. Have they? About whether in the end it was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do?
Well, it's incredibly complex. The whole issue of busing really is a larger one about educational equity in a lot of ways. And you'd be hard-pressed, even if you look at the activists that were pushing for school desegregation, the issue wasn't necessarily about desegregation, about mixing groups of students from different neighborhoods. It was about trying to create equity across schools. And when you have black students and white students, like you did in Boston, in different schools, and lots of inequalities in terms of the resources and opportunities available, you know, the issue there is how do you go about creating that equity, creating a sense of justice around that. And so the NAACP in Boston for 10 years were petitioning and negotiating and sitting in and organizing school boycotts. They were doing all these sorts of things. And they saw the courts really as a mode of last resort. So busing became a method to try to accomplish this. So it was political in exactly the way that you're saying. But it was really about this broader question about resources and opportunities.
It was. But in some ways, we've gone backwards. I mean, without it, we've kind of reverted to where we were.
Yes, I mean, we found this summer I was organizing a research program at Brandeis. We collaborated with Jackson State University. So we came across these essays in the City of Boston archives, but we were working with a group of students from Mississippi and Massachusetts. Well, it was amazing to see them. And we were working with this combined group, and we spent half our time in Boston, half our time in Jackson. Now, the trajectories of those cities are incredibly different in terms of how they approach civil rights issues and school educational equity issues in general, but the outcomes are, as you're saying, remarkably similar. Meaning, if you look at Jackson, you look at Boston, you see those school systems are both very highly segregated today.
If you could just kind of pinpoint something as a takeaway that you thought was different about the kids, you know, the white kids versus the African-American kids or other maybe Latino kids, was there something that was different about them? I mean, David says the whole idea was to provide an equitable playing field in terms of education. Did you feel they were more educated? Did you feel they had more money? Was there something that you felt?
No, I don't think you know, at 14, I don't think I was thinking about whether, you know, they had more money. I think there's always that sense that we're different. How we're different, because everybody points out the race factor. But other than that, I think when it all boiled down at the end of the day, we were just kids. Yeah. Just kids trying to go to school, trying to make our parents proud.
Did you have, you must have had athletic events together, and that must have been one of the crossover.
I ran track.
Yeah.
And on my track team, no.
No, even that. All right.
But later on, like when I went to West Roxbury High School, where I graduated, we definitely had a mixed group, and that's what I'm saying. As time progressed, and people got the opportunity to spend time together.
All right, great. Thank you so much, David. That was great find. Thank you for sharing those letters with us, David Cunningham and Leona Hampton.
Thank you.
Leola Hampton.